Chairman, and I want to thank everyone for being here as well today. This is an issue that is really essential to American manufacturing, which is what your testimony has been so compelling to hear, as well as in my home state of Minnesota. But I do remember being in Arizona just a few years ago and hearing the Ping story, and this issue was raised about when are we going to have action on this issue from a real American success story. And so it's great to hear your testimony here again today. And so we've heard the statistics, you've all shared them, but it really does bear repeating, Mr. Chairman, because if you think about since the last MTB bill expired, back just a few years ago, we've seen another $748 million in higher taxes for American domestic manufacturing. You have American manufacturers every year have now had an almost $2 billion hit to our economy because of this. And the MTB package back in 2010, it was found to support, as was mentioned, 90,000 jobs right here in the United States, increased production of $4.6 billion, and expanded our economy by about $3.5 billion. These are significant numbers, and it's a pretty good bang for your buck if you think about it. Thousands of jobs, billions of dollars going into the economy for a few $1 million in lower tariffs. That doesn't impact negatively any other American manufacturer, domestic importer. And a perfect example in Minnesota is a company called Knitcraft, domestic sweater manufacturer. They're in Minnesota. They used to buy the wrinkle-free, specialized mercerized cotton that it needs to make its sweaters from American producers. But eventually, higher costs and overseas competition drove the U.S. cotton producers out of business, so they didn't have that source in the market. So Knitcraft was forced to turn to an Italian supplier to get the inputs needed to manufacture and then sell their sweaters. But of course, that came at a price. Higher tariffs, of course, on those inputs. And they got hit twice. They got hit once by the inputs on the tariffs on the cotton they imported from Italy, and they also got hit on new tariffs on their sweaters that they sold in Canada. And so when Knitcraft was sourcing their cotton from the United States, their sweaters did not face a tariff in Canada due to trade agreements between the two countries. But when the inputs started coming in from Italy, the company lost the duty-free treatment of their products north of the border. So I'm really encouraged by today's hearing. I have one quick question I want to ask the panel, and maybe just a couple can respond quickly. I understand that the tariffs on certain finished goods are lower than the tariffs on inputs needed to manufacture these finished goods. And we already heard the Ping story, but anyone else? How does that put our manufacturers at a competitive disadvantage, and how do MTBs help to counteract this competitive disadvantage? Because you're, again, higher tariff on your finished good versus a lower tariff on the input. Anyone?
Yeah, I don't have a good perspective on that, unfortunately, at this stage, Mr. Paulsen. I apologize. Okay. But I can say, in your state, we work very closely with one of the major manufacturers in your state, 3M, with their thin slate insulation. Right? And like us, 3M brings a lot of their innovation, and a lot of that process occurs in their labs and in their facilities in St. Paul. So they, I think for competitive reasons, they source and do some of their manufacturing for certain higher volume commodity products offshore. But I would argue, similar to us, a lot of the jobs that are created in building that high value content into those products is employs a lot of people in St. Paul.
Thank the gentleman. His time has expired. Mr. Neal.